of rural Missouri. When you get 80 years old, you get a little emotion. But they are special people, and Missouri is special people. And so I began to really believe in this project, and I thought it could be done. And because no one said no. No one said no. The only problems in there was the medical system. Because when I started talking to the eye surgeons and all, well, Barnes says, well, we have a little eye bank here and we don't want to get involved in it. And Kansas City said, well, we have a little eye thing here and we'll do that. We don't want to get involved. And Springfield was really not into it at that time. And so when you started talking about organizing and putting it on an efficient basis and developing it where it would really work and contribute not only to the quality but the future of medicine, it became more important. And so that's the first thing we had to do. The next big thing was, how are we going to get people to donate the tissue? Because everybody from Pilot Grove to West Plains to Poplar Bluff and everybody says, we'll set up a bank. We'll take containers and have them here. We'll talk to people about donating and all of that. And you know what happened in the Lions Club? A fire caught on that went throughout the population of the state of Missouri and changed the attitude of the people of Missouri. And so back it went to the legislature. Now you don't think about anything now, because many of you, I'm sure, has had this form put in front of you saying, when I die, I'll donate whatever tissue is needed to whatever for my body. I've signed it, my wife signed it, you know, all of that. 50 years ago, you couldn't get that. I mean, it had to be a big family reunion vote on it before you, and fights before you could take your grandmother's eyes or something of this sort. Well, it ended up in the legislature. And they talked it over, and the pressure of all the people from the Lions Club and the grassroots that went out there, Missouri has probably the best donation law in the whole United States. There's essentially no restrictions. Why? In the old days, the law said, well, once you take your last breath, you're not an entity, you're not a person, so therefore you can't sign what you give away, because once you die, your signature is not worth anything. So it has to be your heirs that have to sign to do this, and so then that gets to be the big place. First thing they did was said, you can sign in advance and make commitments in advance for your wishes. That would be like your will and that sort of thing, and they changed that part of the law. But in all, it ended up in Missouri, you can sign to donate and use everything. And that was the big wall that was torn down thanks to the Lions Clubs and their attitude of putting that through to the people of Missouri. And that goes on today, and no one's ever challenged it. In fact, many of the laws in the United States are patterned after that law that was put together in Missouri. So the Lions Clubs of Missouri actually influenced the issue of transplantation for the whole country. And not many of you, I bet, have really realized that. Well, once we got that wall torn down, I started traveling to see what we could do to make this tissue where it could be stored, where it would last longer than 72 hours and this sort of thing. And I met with this Dr. King, who had this idea about glycerin, and met with him and went over that with him and said, in that last sum in which you put the eye tissue, take it up into pieces, put it down in a tube of glycerin, and it slowly extracts the fluid, the water out of the eye tissue, and it will stay in there for, at that time we said a year or something of this sort. Now it may even stay longer. Well, I said, if I can get the water out of the glycerin takes it out of the eye tissue, and then we can get the water taken out of the glycerin, it may stay longer. So we designed a vacuum system, a high vacuum system that was so high that you had to use glass because of the metal, you would pull air through it. And so the people who could design this was at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And John Vassler helped, and through his friend set me up, and I had an apartment on Lake Mendota. And if you've ever been to Madison, number one, they have the best food, I think, in the whole country. And number two, they have some of the most beautiful lakes and campus there that you can imagine. But it took me about 2 months to get that equipment manufactured and brought here and set it up here. And to make a long story short, it worked. It worked. And so while we were doing this, and you only wanted the cornea in front, I said, but why do we want to waste the whites of the eye? Why do we want to waste that vitreous fluid in the eye? And with this vacuum, we started cutting the whites of the eyes and putting those into strips and into the glycerin and sealing those. And then we would dehydrate that fluid into a powder, which they could reconstitute it. Now, the good eye surgeon here will tell you that for a while, this is what they did. And the corneas, you couldn't have a clean cornea. That was only good for stopping an eye that had been injured, and then you went back and transplanted a fresh eye tissue. But it would save an eye. And that's exactly what we were doing it for. But they have now developed better techniques and better surgery. But they tell me, Roger and I, that they still use the sclera, the whites of the eyes, to patch the eye. Because when you cut or tear the white, you can brace it and that sort of thing. So they've gone beyond this. But this bought time for us. And then, now, we started out and set this up. And surprisingly, Kansas City, St. Louis, it all came together, and my gosh, we had containers set in towns I don't even remember now. Down in the Lions Club, we're operating them, and it worked. And so at the end of a year, that's where I left it, about halfway into this point, had the process going, and Dr. Wilson, I said, I'm ready for my surgery training. And I think when Dr. Landis, the first one who came in, I don't know who replaced me at that time. I don't remember. It was Dr. Landis. Because I know he was with you when you moved over to the other place. And of course, the rest is history. And most of that, of course, I was not aware of, except that I talked to Dr. Bonham. Occasionally, he'd tell me really what's going on. But I'm going to finish my speech with the last page of the speech that I gave as I said goodbye in 1961 to the Lions and thank them for what they've done. It says, I would like to say here that in working with many members of the Lions of Missouri, too numerous to mention by name, has somewhat restored my faith in humanity. I think we in the medical profession sometimes are caught in our own little world, and after an especially hard day, we sometimes approach the evening with misgivings and questions about the future of mankind. It seems that we have gotten to the point where individuals think only of themselves and their security and not of his brothers and sisters' misfortunes. But the Lions of Missouri have taught me as an individual a lesson that in this day and age, when life moves at a fast and furious pace and becomes a little more complicated with its mechanization and social organization, there are some people left who will take time out from their busy activities of earning a livelihood to lend his brother a helping hand. I would like to quote a remark made to me by one of the district governors in a private conversation. When he summed it up very nicely, he said, "My ambition is to see the day when any unfortunate person may approach a man with a Lion's emblem on his lapel and feel assured of receiving a helping hand." Thank you.